According to the FFA, or Future Farmers of America, agriculture is more than planting and harvesting. It's a science, it's a business, and it's an art. The FFA is also the future biologists, chemists, veterinarians, engineers, entrepreneurs, and civic leaders. The project I have chosen is to discover more about how agriculture helps and hurts our natural resources, specifically the Boise River. Coming from the Boise River Enhancement Network through the city, the river is lined by an extensive recreational greenbelt. It flows west across the western end of the Snake River Plain in the Treasure Valley and becomes a braided stream with a wide floodplain as it crosses northern Canyon County to the Snake River. The Idaho-Oregon border west of Parma and 3 miles south of Nyssa, Oregon. Because of this, the Boise River is exposed to many places of pollution. Waterfalls from water treatment come in, and construction sites also dump in water to the river. Thanks to water management working with scientists, they understand what they need to do to the water to keep it clean before emptying it in the river. One of the rivers we can use as an example is our local steelhead rivers, such as the Clearwater and Salmon rivers. Every year, thousands of steelhead utilize the South Fork of the Clearwater as their passageway to spawn during the fall and spring runs. Although the steelhead reoccur, so does this river as it struggles to hold pristine waters for these creatures. When we visited this place on a fishing trip, we saw how flooded, polluted, and murky it was. These rivers should be pristine and have average flows year-round in order to have a good steelhead population.
So this is the Boise Watershed Environmental Education Center, and what we are is a water education center that focuses primarily on water education. So whether you come see us or we go to your school or come to say a neighborhood event or an open house or a STEM night at your school, we are usually going to focus on water education of some sort. It could be anything from water quality, like teaching people what not to put into the river. It could be anything relating to the water cycle, geothermal, water conservation, stuff like that. And at the Education Center, we can teach all ages. We say from 2 to 92. We're also housed at the Water Renewal Facility, the West Boise Water Renewal Facility, which is where we clean and treat used water or wastewater that comes from homes, businesses, churches, schools, and whatnot. So basically, any water that goes down a drain. So whether it's toilet flushes, bath water, laundry water, anything like that, that comes out to this facility, and we treat it through a series of processes and then discharge it back into the Boise River so that it can be reused. Yeah. So that's kind of the crux of what we do out here.
Go ahead.
So what are some water, like where does water come from, and like
the water that feeds the Boise River?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we all live in the Boise River Watershed, which is a land area. So just for a little clarification, a watershed is a natural area of land that's going to capture the water that sheds from the mountains, whether it's storm water like rain or some sort of rain or storm event, as well as melting snow. So what happens is that water is going to come down from the mountains or hills and travel, through, Boise National Forest, and then through downtown Boise or the hard surfaces, and eventually it's going to end up in the Boise River. So that's basically where that water comes from as far as the river goes.
What can we do to help the Boise River and the water quality?
Okay, so one of probably our biggest messages out here at the Boise Watershed is pollution prevention, and it's very simple practices. It's just a change of basically your habits and your mindset. So it's preventing things from getting into the river. So trash, litter, stuff like that. You don't want to leave it on the ground because there's a potential for it to go down a storm drain and ultimately goes directly to the river. Dog poop is a huge problem for the Boise River, and that's just all about getting that message out that we're all responsible for our dogs and really taking care of it. We had some issues last spring where some of the parks were closed because of the dog waste issue in the water, so that's a very, very big problem for the Boise River. Also household hazardous waste, making sure that your cars aren't leaking oil, you're not spilling things like that on the ground, paint, solvents, stuff like that, disposing of it safely, and then not over fertilizing your lawns or your gardens or trees using the recommended amount, low phosphorus fertilizer. Those are all really simple ways to protect the river, but they do a lot to protect the river.
Yeah. Based on a University of Idaho study conducted for over 25 years, some conclusions were drawn. Past farm management efforts to control nitrogen pollution and better sewage treatment plant facilities have been very effective in terms of reducing nitrogen levels below EPA standards in the Boise River. The same is not true for phosphorus concentration levels, which exceeded EPA standards from 1973 to 1990. Population, stream flow, and high-valued irrigated crop acreage were associated with nearly 80% of the variations in phosphorus levels in the Boise River at Parma during these years. Increases in urban population and high-valued crop acreage raised phosphorus levels by an estimated 0.8 of a milligram. Population increases accounted for 62% of this change, and high-valued crop acreage had not increased from 1973 to 1990. Phosphorus levels would still be above EPA standards. Even the modest amounts of economic activities would bring levels from what they are at Lucky Peak Dam to above EPA standards. With these facts, we can conclude that over time we will run out of non-renewable resources and have to rely on nature to provide for us. So if we keep polluting our natural resources, we will not get what we need in return. It's time to think about the future, not just the present, or we will all be at risk. Our video sources for this video came from Idaho Department of Environment and Community Services, 1973, and Roger B. Long University of Idaho, Idaho Department of Fish and Game, and the Idaho Statesman, and finally the Boise River Enhancement Network. Thank you.